Hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm bringing you a story filled with betrayal and revenge. Imagine being a former soldier, following a strict daily routine, until the day you discover your wife and her boss, a man you've never trusted, arrogant and disrespectful, have been unfaithful to you. It's more than a simple affair. They're planning to make you a part of their immoral scheme, including raising their child. But when things spiral out of control, with violence and law getting involved, how will you strike back? This is a drama about family, loyalty, and justice, packed with tense confrontations and shocking twists. Don't go away. Join me to unravel the beginning of this tale. Let's formally listen to today's story of infidelity. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for your support. The day began, like any other, with the usual routine that seemed more automatic than deliberate. As a former soldier, you retain that discipline even in civilian life. Morning workout, quick breakfast, and right into the day's tasks. It was completely mechanical. Despite the calm, there was a nagging sense that something was about to change, but I couldn't pinpoint what. Looking back, I realized that feeling was a warning that I should have taken. For years, I thought I had established a stable lifestyle, marriage, a stable job, and a secure home. However, life often surprises you when you least expect it. In retrospect, I should have noticed the cracks before everything collapsed. However, you cannot change the past. All you can do is brace yourself when the impact occurs. That day I was caught off guard by a betrayal I never expected during my time in the Middle East as a Marine. I survived 3 ambushes, each of which taught me valuable survival skills. First, maintain vigilance and anticipate threats. Unfortunately, I overlooked the signs with Lauren and Gregory Cross. Second, seek immediate cover, as I did by retreating to my bedroom. Finally, make a plan to get yourself out of danger. I quickly devised a strategy, changing into casual clothes and discreetly slipping my iPhone into my shirt pocket to record. I went into my dressing room, took a hidden key from an old shoebox labeled Captain BK Rams YUSMC, and discovered my Marine Corps Beretta, and I am inside. I'd been married to Lauren for 7 years and had 3 wonderful children, Danny, who was 7, and twin 6-year-old girls, Emma and Olivia. My family was my world, and I tried not to let work interfere with our time together. We lived in a 4-bedroom house in a wonderful neighborhood. Our parents lived nearby and paid regular visits to the grandchildren, as did Lauren's sister. Life seemed perfect until the kids started school and Lauren went back to work. I should have recognized the warning signs, but my faith in Lauren's loyalty clouded my judgment. She began resting more provocatively. Our closeness dwindled as she spent more time at work. When I asked her about it, she dismissed it, claiming it was a fantastic career opportunity that would benefit us financially. I'd met her boss, Gregory Cross, at several social gatherings and Christmas parties. He was the senior partner in her firm, arrogant and disrespectful. I've never trusted him. Lauren appeared possessive, unwilling to let her leave the office. The few times I visited him at work, I hadn't paid attention to Lauren's potential romance with her boss. Things fell apart right as the twins finished kindergarten. The kids were spending the weekend with my parents, and I was excited to rekindle our relationship. But when I arrived home that evening, Lauren was already dressed up, looking stunning and clearly ready for a night out. "Wow, you look stunning. If I had known we had a date, I would have rushed home. Just give me a few minutes to freshen up and I'll be prepared. Where are we going?" I asked, smiling. Lauren smirked, but it was not a smile. "Esther, we are not going anywhere." "I am, but not with you," she replied. I was stunned. "What exactly are you talking about?" I asked. "I have a date with my boss, Gregory Cross, and that's only the beginning. New rules will be implemented, starting now. Stan is picking me up and I will be staying with him in a downtown suite tonight, and tomorrow I'll be back Sunday afternoon. She explained calmly. What the hell are you talking about? I shouted, calm down. This is how it will be. I'm leaving and we'll be back on Sunday. She responded coldly, nonsense. If you think I am putting up with this, you are mistaken. You've left and won't be returning. I said, my temper rising. No, Alex, I'm coming home. We are staying married and I will continue to live here. I love you, you love you. But I need more. If you make this difficult, you'll be the one who leaves. It would be a shame if our children's father ended up broken in jail. Let's sit down and I'll explain the changes before Stan arrives in 30 minutes. Lauren was confident that if he had to explain it, you would dislike it even more. I replied, if that a hole shows up, he'll get his back kicked. In 31 minutes. Lauren warned you not to do that. You must listen to what he can do to you if you do not cooperate, and Leo will accompany him. Leo, his driver and bodyguard, is big and mean and he will not hesitate to put you in the hospital. I felt a familiar sense of danger, as if I were in the Middle East, ambushed on one side and my wife Gregory Cross on the other. They had the advantage and I was trapped. I squeezed past Lauren and went upstairs. Where are you going? She demanded. I need to clean up. I'll be down in 5 minutes. I said, attempting to regain my composure. As a Marine, I learned 3 rules about ambushes: anticipate, take cover, and plan your escape. I missed the first with Lauren and Gregory, but I went back to my room. Then I made a plan. I changed into casual clothes, put my iPhone on record and slipped it into my shirt pocket. I went to the dressing room and found a hidden key in an old shoebox labeled Captain Beck, Ranswy, USMC. I found my Marine Corps Beretta 9M pistol, which had saved my life in combat. I loaded the weapon. Lauren called from downstairs, Alex, get down here or you will regret it. I will be right down. Give me a beer, I said, loading the chamber. I tucked the weapon behind my belt and pulled my shirt over it, making it disappear. I then activated the phone's recording feature, put it back in my pocket, and prepared to confront Lauren. I was determined to let her speak, to get her to reveal her plans and how she viewed the situation using the interrogation techniques I learned in the Marines. Lauren was waiting for me at the dining table holding a glass of white wine and a cold beer. It's about time, she explained. We need to speak before Stan arrives. Lauren, it sounds like you've got a lot to say. Tell me about this new reality I must accept. I responded. She started. I want you to remember that I adore you more than anything. I want to grow old alongside you and I do not want to hurt you. I cut her off. Lauren, no more sweet talk. Please call me Alex and I will call you Lauren. She appeared offended, but continued, as of tonight. Things have changed and you must accept that. Stan and I have had an affair for months. It began with flirting, and we are now very close. I was flattered by his attention, which led to more clearly. You haven't considered the consequences. I said, I apologize, Alex, but that does not mean I don't love you. You are still the person I want to spend my life with. She responded, good luck with that. I muttered, why come clean now? After months of lying, I asked. We got tired of hiding it. We want to enjoy our relationship openly. Sleeping, traveling and spending quality time together as lovers. The only way to accomplish this was for you to accept it. She explained, good luck with that. I repeated, no, Alex, we are staying married. You only need to accept that. I will be spending time with Stan, staying the night, traveling and attending events. It will benefit us financially. Consider the benefits: vacations, college for the kids, and upgrading the Lake H house. If you think I want anything paid for with that money, you're mistaken. I shot back. Lauren said angrily, I'm not a strunt. I'm an asset to the company and I'm proud to be Stan's mistress. This will not last forever. Maybe in a few years things will return to normal. She added, Stan also wants to be your friend. He believes in sharing as long as everyone gets what they want. He knows I still love you and want you in my life. He may even become a family friend, maybe an uncle to our children. I was furious, but I maintained my composure. He will never be with my children ever. Do you understand what I ask? Why would he want to become close to my family? Doesn't he have his own? Stan is married to a younger woman from a prominent family, but she is unable to bear children. Lauren explained perhaps he should adopt rather than participate in other people's marriages. I said Stan wishes to have an heir to his law firm among his own children. He prefers a son but is willing to accept a daughter. Lauren responded, so why doesn't he just use a surrogate to have as many children as he wants? I asked. Lauren responded he mentioned it, but he feels he'd be a terrible father. He wants any child he needs to grow up in a loving family. She continued, lowering her head. I could feel my anger rising. So he wants you to get pregnant and let me raise his child. Lauren insisted it wouldn't be illegitimate. It would be my child too, and I would love them just as much as you would, because you love me. Stan would pay us a large sum of money to raise the baby, covering all expenses until they graduated from college. Are you pregnant yet? I asked. She replied no, but he wants me to stop taking the pill soon. I told him I wanted you to be comfortable with the new arrangement first. This keeps getting better, I muttered. Lauren became angry. Stop saying it, she demanded. I understand you're upset right now, but we hope you'll come around eventually. Before I could reply, the doorbell rang. Lauren rushed to open the door and Stan, her boss, entered, wrapping his arm around her and kissing her. This keeps getting better, I repeated under my breath. How did he take it? Stan asked. No. Well, I believe you should explain the consequences, Lauren replied. Stan, a tall, slightly overweight man with graying hair, stepped into my personal space with confidence. Mr. Hunter, we need to talk. He spoke firmly. Talk. I should kick your back. I replied, you could try. He smirked. But my driver will be with you before you know it. You'll be in jail tonight, so why not sit down? I sighed, looked at the large man outside the door and reluctantly sat down. Great. We can now communicate like civilized people. Your wife has agreed to be my personal assistant, which includes some additional responsibilities. We've been enjoying our relationship for 6 months, but we're tired of hiding. You two will make a new arrangement. I'll take care of Lauren's needs most of the time at the hotel office, but occasionally at your house when you're not there. Do you think I'll accept this? I'll divorce her. Before I put up with this nonsense, I snapped. Stan, stay calm. Mr. Ramsey, I suggest you reconsider. I'm a powerful lawyer at the largest law firm in town. If you try to divorce her, I will ensure that you lose everything, your home, money, and children. You'll pay alimony and child support while she continues to live with me. You could end up in jail and lose your job. Your family and friends will turn away from you. I sat there stunned, realizing just how far Lauren and Stan were willing to go. Stan knew I would not act rashly. Now he warned me that any attempt to fight back would result in severe consequences, including physical harm. He concluded by saying, be a good boy and accept this new arrangement. Your wife is an excellent assistant. I turned to Lauren and said, would you really do this to me? She replied, I don't want to, Alex, but I won't have to. If you cooperate, this will become second nature to you. After a while, still stunned, I watched them walk toward the door just as they were about to leave. I spoke up. Before you leave, I have a few words to say. Stan rolled his eyes, clearly annoyed. Make it quick, I began. After a few drinks, I mourn my marriage. I'm calling your wife to tell her everything. Then I'll call Lauren's sister Lucy and have her inform your parents. Stan appeared surprised because this wasn't the response he expected. "What have you said?" he asked. I ignored him and continued. "Tomorrow morning I will change all of the locks. After that, I'll take Sophia down the street for dinner and dancing. She's been flirting with me for months and I never considered it before. But things have changed." Lauren appeared to be hurt. "Alex, you cannot do that," I pushed on. "When you turn on Sunday, you'll find all of Lauren's belongings in the yard. Pick them up before the sprinklers go off." On Monday morning, Stan became enraged and clenched his fists as he realized his threats were ineffective. Lauren appeared pained. "One more thing," I added. "On Monday I'll meet with a divorce attorney. I'll file for divorce on the grounds of infidelity, a name under which you stand as a co-defendant. I'll also sue you for alienation of affection and violating your company's policies. Even if the lawsuit fails, they will publicly embarrass you and harm your reputation." Stan exploded in rage, hurling the overnight bag against the wall and stepping into my personal space, jabbing me in the chest. I resisted the urge to retaliate. "Listen, betrayed man," he sneered. "You don't know who you're dealing with. I'm Gregory Cross, the head of the county's largest law firm. I could legally destroy you. In one day, by the time I get to the hotel, you'll be arrested on false charges. Do you think you can fight me? You cannot. I know the cops, the district attorney, and the judges. Everyone owes me favors. If you step out of line, your life will end."
Stan was on a roll.
So I let him continue. "If you go out with Sophia tomorrow, the cops will stop. You discover pills in your car and you'll spend years fighting charges. No lawyer will accept your case against me and I will continue to enjoy your wife while you are ruined. Do you understand, betrayed man?" "I believe you," I responded sarcastically. Stan glared at me. "Show some respect. Call me Sir or Mr. Walsh. Leo will teach you proper manners if you insult him again." He tried to punch me, but I hit him first. Lauren pushed him onto the couch, rushing to his side as he screamed, "You'll pay for this, Leo. Get in here." The door opened and Leo, a large and intimidating man, entered the room. "Yes, Mr. Walsh," he answered. "Take care of him." Stan instructed and Leo moved toward me. Lauren attempted to protest, but Cross dismissed her with a wave. Lauren mentioned that Cross would bring his bodyguard, which made me expect trouble. So I stood my ground, as Leo swung his fist at my head, causing me pain. I was wondering if I'd need a new carpet because of the blood stains. Leo hesitated, unsure whether to continue striking me or look to the Cross for guidance. Leo threw a punch, all shorter and occurs. Realizing I couldn't take it any longer, I taunted Leo, saying, "You knock like a girl." His pride has been wounded. Leo prepared to throw another punch before he could react. I managed to defend myself and the situation took an unexpected and shocking turn. Leo appeared stunned as he fumbled for his weapon. Realizing he was in a gunfight, I warned him to stop and the tension in the room increased. I crawled over, took his weapon and pocketed it. "How much respect do you believe I have for you?" I asked Leo. He shakes his head. "Exactly none. I said there's no reason not to destroy you." "Right." Leo groaned with pain. I told him that if I didn't get him to the doctor soon, he might not make it. As I focused on Leo, Lauren shouted a warning and I turned to see Cross approaching with a fireplace poker. I instinctively tried to block it with my arm, but the force caused me severe pain. The weapon fell to the floor and I grabbed it first, preventing further escalation. "Now where's your phone?" I demanded. Walsh hesitated before pointing to his coat pocket. I took out the phone and instructed him to unlock it with shaky hands. He did it. "Now call your wife via FaceTime," I ordered across. His wife replied, perplexed. "Stan, why are you calling?" "Who is this?" "Mrs. Cross. My name is Alex Hunter." "You don't know me, But your husband knows Lauren, my wife. They've been having an affair for several months. Her shock was palpable as I revealed her husband's face on the floor. Oh my God, she screamed. Do not hurt him, I explained to Mrs. Cross. Your husband and my wife have planned a weekend together. When I objected, he had his driver, try Y, to help me. Unfortunately for Leo, I needed to defend myself. She stammered. Gregory informed me that he was working in Palm Springs this weekend. He lied. I responded he's here with Lauren, who was excited to spend the weekend with him. I showed Lauren, who was pale and trembling on the couch. Mrs. Cross, this is what is really happening. After a pause, she whispered, I'm surprised too. I have to go now. The police will be here shortly. I tossed the phone aside, saying it was nice talking to you. I turned back to Cross, adding, so now your wife is aware of your minor side activities. What were your plans if I told her send Leo and his friends after me? Right. Cross did not respond, too preoccupied with clutching his injured leg as blood seeped through his pants. I'll make this clear. Cross, I said quietly. If you send anyone after me, I will destroy them and then come for you, understand? Walsh nodded, pale and sweaty. Then I noticed a foul odor. Have you just your paints? I asked, mocking him. Lauren appeared horrified as the situation unfolded. Lauren, bring me my briefcase, I said calmly, still holding the weapon on Walsh. She retrieved it nervously. While I took out my laptop holding it up, I inquired, is this the computer you were planning to load with evidence? Cross. He said nothing. I turned it over, positioned it near his head and fired 2 bullets at it. The fire shot echoed throughout the room, filling it with smoke leaning in. I whispered into his ear, try loading it with anything now. Overall, are you satisfied? I stood up and entered the kitchen. My mind was racing and my head hurt terribly. I splashed water on my face, realizing I could have a concussion. When I returned to the living room, everyone remained in place, stayed put until the police arrived. They should arrive any minute, I remarked sarcastically before stepping onto the porch outside, where several neighbors had gathered. Alex, were there any shots fired? Yes. Did anyone make an emergency call? I asked, and a few people raised their hands. Colonel Thomas Barker, a retired Marine and my closest friend, was among them. Are you hurt, Captain? He inquired with concern. You should see the other guys, I said with a grim smile. I hear sirens in the distance. Colonel, I called. I need your help. Of course, Captain, he said, stepping onto the porch. Help me unload and place my weapons on the table. I do not want to be holding one when the cops arrive, I explained, handing him Leo's weapon. The colonel quickly disarmed and set the weapons on the table. Sophia, a neighbor, noticed my injuries and approached to help. Turning to the colonel, I stated I wish I could explain everything, but there isn't time. I fought with my wife's boyfriend, a powerful lawyer. He threatened to put pills in my car and have me arrested. Could you please hide my car after this is over? If the garage is not taped off, the code represents my street address. Oh, will do, Captain, he responded. Sophia added, Alex, you don't look good. My head is spinning. I admit it. Maybe I was not taller than I thought. Sophia helped me sit down. Just as the police cars arrived, sirens blaring, the officers worked their way through the crowd. Weapons are at the ready. The colonel reassured them that there was no immediate danger, pointing to the unloaded weapons on the table. One officer looked at me and said, you need medical attention. The ambulances arrived and medics rushed into the house to care for Leah. Meanwhile, my head was spinning faster and Sophia told me to lie down. A medic examined my face and arm, suspecting they were broken. I lost consciousness and only vaguely recall Leo being carried on a stretcher and cross-limping to the ambulance. A female officer, then led Lauren outside to a police car. She came to a halt when she saw me lying on the porch, tears streaming down her cheeks as she assessed my injury. "Alex, I am deeply sorry. This is not what I wanted," Lauren cried. "I never meant for you to be hurt." She attempted to reach out to me, but I pushed her away. "Go to hell, Lauren," I said coldly. Her handler quickly led her to the police car. I'm not sure if I passed out or if the medic administered something, but I was out for 3 days. When I awoke, my vision was blurry, but I saw a nurse who appeared to be an angel in white, despite the fact that she was about 60. "Mr. Alex, do you hear me?" she asked. "I'm so glad you are back with us. I must be in the hospital." I replied weakly. "Yes," she confirmed. "You're in Mercy General Hospital. You have been asleep for 3 days. 3 days?" I exclaimed. "Yes. I'll contact the doctor. Simply relax." "My name is Rose," she said politely. When I was in the first when left alone, I assessed my injuries. My right forearm was in a cast. My face was bandaged and my left eye and nose hurt to the touch. Aside from my injuries, I was hooked up to machines such as a saline drip and a blood pressure cuff. I also had a catheter. Rose returned with the doctor, who introduced himself as Drive York. He informed me that I had a fractured forearm, broken nose and a black eye. He kept me sedated for a minor concussion because it was late. He gave me something to help me sleep until I awoke the next morning. I discovered my left wrist handcuffed to the bed rail. "What the hell?" I exclaimed, tugging on the cuff. "Relax, Mr. Ramsey," said a voice across the room. A middle-aged man wearing a suit introduced himself as Detective Sergeant Hartman. "We were worried you would try to flee, run under this condition." "Why should I run?" I inquired, bewildered. "You're under arrest," Hartman said calmly. "What for?" I inquired. "Shocked attack with the intent to commit liquidation and act with a deadly weapon, among other charges, including unlawful discharge of a firearm." Gregory Cross filed the charges on behalf of himself, Leo Rivers, and your wife, Lauren. He explained I should have known I muttered. Hartman then read my rights and exited the room. Rose returned quietly to monitor my vital signs. I asked if she was aware of the handcuffs, and she confirmed that she had apologized. Rising softly, I tried to lighten the mood by joking about taking her out to dinner once this was over. Later, Dreyfus assured me that my injuries would heal and informed me that I would be transferred to another room with a different doctor. Soon after, Detective Hartman and some orderlies wheeled me up to the 3rd floor Astable East Guard. Once in my new room, the handcuffs were removed and I was reconnected to the machines before leaving. Hartman informed me that I would be appearing in court via video in a few days to enter a plea. He also said he'd arrange for a public defender to meet with me. As I lay in that hospital room, I thought about how quickly my life had turned upside down. I was heartbroken over my marriage and concerned about my children. Where were they? What were they told? Who took care of them? I also wondered about my job, as I had been absent for days without notice. The hospital staff was unable to answer my questions. On the 5th day, a young public defender named Sam Walton arrived. He went over the charges against me, which were the same ones Detective Hartman had mentioned. He inquired as to how I intended to plead and suggested that I negotiate with the district attorney. Suppose I admitted to some minor charges. I interrupted, saying I am not guilty of any charges. Sam appeared surprised but continued. He told me Lauren had been staying with her sister Lucy and the children were with them. The children were only informed that I would be gone for a long time. When I asked about my job, Sam offered to contact my company and explain the circumstances. As I reviewed the charges, I noticed one for spousal abuse. Sam clarified that the cross was added after Lauren claimed I had slapped her, displaying photographs of bruises on her face and arm. I did not do that, I protested, but Sam appeared skeptical. I didn't trust him enough to go any further, fearing Cross's influence. "Sam, you must plead not guilty for me," I insisted. He reluctantly agreed but warned that I would have to post bail due to the shooting charges. He seemed skeptical about my innocence. I didn't mention that I had evidence proving self-defense because I didn't want that information to reach the police or the district attorney. Instead, I asked Sam to contact my uncle, Jack Johnson, a retired Navy attorney, for assistance. I told Sam to keep this private and only inform Uncle George of the charges in my plea. Later that night, Sam confirmed that my uncle would arrive soon and advised me to say nothing but not guilty at the trial. The following day I was arraigned via video from the hospital. I pleaded not guilty to all charges. The prosecutor wanted me held without bail, but the judge let me stay in the hospital for another 2 days before being transferred to jail. Uncle George arrived the day before my transfer and officially took over my case, including permission to visit me. Seeing him moved me to tears. Uncle George recognized the gravity of my situation and, following a brief reunion, got down to business. He set up a private meeting to discuss the case and kept me up to date on family matters. He assured me that the kids were fine and would stay with Lucy until the police cleared the house. Lucy was puzzled. Lauren had told her what had happened and the charges leveled against me. But Lucy, who had known me for many years, found it difficult to believe. She was relieved that Uncle George was there to help. Uncle George then inquired about my side of the story in hushed tones. I told him everything, including how Gregory Cross, Leo Rivers and Lauren had most likely created a false version of events. Following my arrest, I also revealed that I had a videotape of the entire incident saved on my iPhone and hidden in a kitchen drawer. Uncle George didn't show much emotion, but he appeared relieved that there was potential evidence. He assured me that I'd be your guardian angel throughout this. You concentrate on getting better while I build your defense and prepare to bail. I also asked him to check on my children and he promised to coordinate with Lucy once I was discharged. Charred from the hospital, I was transferred to the county jail. 3 days later I appeared before the judge and Uncle George was able to get me released on bail, albeit under house arrest. Uncle George had rented a townhouse in a gated community where I would be staying. He also lived there while I couldn't leave. I was no longer in jail. Uncle George was working on the case, including hiring a private investigator to pursue leads. The most difficult challenge was retrieving my phone from the house without causing legal trouble. He promised to find a solution, but he understood it would take time. Meanwhile, Uncle George created new self-owned accounts for both of us, ensuring that we could communicate. I called my neighbor, the Colonel, who mentioned some unusual activity at my house. When I told Uncle George, he suggested we invite the Colonel over for beer and steak. The Colonel stated that about a week after the incident he witnessed two men in our clothing attempting to pick the garage door lock. He called for help, grabbed his dog and a bat and confronted them. Surprised, the intruders backed away but threatened him. The Colonel's dog growled and he took a batter stance, with the bat scaring them away. They fled in a black SUV with smudged license plates. The police arrived, took the report and then left. I remembered Cross's threat to plant pills in my car, so I was relieved when the Colonel moved it to a safe location. The Colonel had another story. 2 days after Lauren returned home, he noticed a black SUV parked in front. Two men were talking to Lauren near the open garage, pointing to the location where my car usually sat. After a brief conversation, they went inside and left. 45 minutes later, the Colonel made a note of the SUV's license plate number. Uncle Jake checked the license plate against his sources and discovered it belonged to Unique Services, a private investigation firm. The company only hired Jose Gonzalez and Miguel Ortega, both former police officers with questionable backgrounds. Jose resigned due to a theft issue and Miguel was fired for falsifying records. Gregory Cross, his law firm, was among their clients. Retrieving my cell phone from the kitchen became urgent. Uncle Jake called Lauren and suggested they meet to discuss resolving the situation and possibly dropping charges. Lauren recognized Uncle Jake from family gatherings but was suspicious. She agreed to meet the next day, but insisted on having one of her lawyers present. Uncle Jake agreed. At 6 p.m., Uncle Jake arrived at my house. Lauren greeted him warmly, and they shared a brief hug. She was dressed modestly in a skirt and blouse. Her hair was in a ponytail. Inside, a young man named Gordon Merritt, an associate at Cross's law firm, was introduced. They all sat in the family room and Lauren offered to get some coffee. Merritt suggested getting right to business, taking out a tape recorder. Uncle Jake the same, and they both smiled. Uncle Jake began by expressing his regret for the situation, saying he had always admired TR and me as a couple. Lauren responded, sadly, stating that she never intended for things to get out of control. Uncle Jake continued, implying that he believes the charges against me. He mentioned that I had claimed Lauren and Cross were having an affair, which pushed me over the edge. When I discovered a Cross in the house, Merritt intervened, stating that the evidence appeared to be solid against me. Uncle Jake suggested that I wasn't thinking clearly at the time of the incident because I thought Cross was taking TRA away. Merritt thought about it but said they would only consider it if I pleaded guilty. Uncle Jake responded by questioning whether all charges had to be admitted or if some could be reduced or dropped. Merritt stated that he would need to consult Cross, who had influence with the DA and may prefer a quieter resolution to avoid harming his reputational business. Before leaving, Uncle Jake reminded Lauren that I loved and missed the children. He also warned her that if my story was proven true, she could be charged with perjury and obstruction of justice. He issued a similar warning to Merritt, implying that if he knowingly supported a false narrative, he could also face prosecution. With that, Uncle Jake stood up and asked for some water. Lauren pointed him to the kitchen, not realizing that retrieving my hidden phone was the real goal. Uncle Jake went to the kitchen, making sure he wasn't visible from the family room. He opened the refrigerator noisily before quickly searching the drawer by the sink for my iPhone, which was hidden among dish towels. He tucked it away, poured himself some ice water, and returned to the family room approximately 2 minutes later. "Is there anything you'd like to say before I leave, Lauren?" he asked. Lauren looked nervously at Gordon Merritt, who replied, "We have nothing more to add now. Mr. Johnson, we will notify you of any changes to the charges and you must cooperate if you want this case to be resolved." Uncle Jake thanked them for meeting and then left. He did not return the iPhone to the townhouse, but rather had it analyzed by Digital Analysis Solutions. He explained the significance of the video and audio recordings in my defense and also agreed to handle them carefully. They promised to get back to him in a couple of days. When Uncle Jake and I visited DOS, they had already transferred all of the phone's data to their server. They discovered the critical video and made multiple copies to ensure it could not be lost or tampered with. We watched the video, which clearly captured the events, including Leo pointing a weep at me, despite some blurry sections. DOS also found 97 unopened emails and 64 text messages sent following the incident. The majority were from friends and family, but one suspicious message contained 27 photos that would have automatically downloaded to my phone's photo files if opened. Walsh appeared to have attempted to plant evidence. After I had destroyed my computer, Uncle Jake thanked DAS and agreed to leave the phone with them for safekeeping. Uncle Jake took a few copies of the videos with him. As we reviewed the evidence and discussed our next steps, he considered whether to present the evidence to the district attorney now, which could result in all charges being dropped and potentially implicitly implicating Cross, Leo and Lauren. However, if Cross's influence was as strong as suspected, the DAO might be able to quietly resolve the case. Alternatively, we could wait until the hearing during which the prosecution would present its case before revealing our evidence, forcing the DAO to charge the conspirators with perjury, obstruction of justice, and other offenses. That would result in significant jail time and a better chance of obtaining custody of my children. When Uncle Jake asked how I wanted to proceed, I said, "Let's burn them all." He was satisfied. I was hoping Alex would say that I want to expose them publicly and have a Perry Mason moment in court. There are 3 weeks until the hearing. Uncle Jake focused on preparing our case. He realized that revealing the video to Sue might result in it being suppressed, so he decided to keep it hidden until the right moment. Uncle Jake took a brief leave a week before the hearing to return to Cisco to attend court and spend time with family.
During that time, I received a call from the gate guard informing me that Lauren was at the gate and wanted to see me.
I immediately called Uncle Jake, who advised me that if she wanted to talk, I should listen, but not touch her. Remember, she's dangerous. Do not worry, Uncle Jake. I replied, she is poison to me now. Uncle Jake said, "You know what you need to do." "Yes, Uncle George, I do," I confirmed. After finishing my call with Uncle George, I called security and asked them to let Lauren through. Just a few minutes before she arrived, I quickly cleaned up the townhouse. I removed the legal papers from the dining table and threw them on the bed, collected the beer cans, cleaned the kitchen and loaded the dishwasher. I changed into Dockers and then a sports shirt, combed my hair and kept my 3-day stubble, giving me a more serious appearance. Lauren knocked, so I opened the door. She looked fantastic, clearly putting effort into her appearance. In a red pleated skirt and a pink cashmere sweater, her hair was styled in a loose updo and her makeup was minimal. "Come inside, Lauren," I said. "You look fantastic." "Thank you, Alex. You look good too," she said, complimenting my slim figure. I've had time to exercise and eat healthier, I explained, inviting her to sit on the couch. I served her a glass of white wine and sat down with a glass of red. After a few sips, I asked why she wanted to see me. "Alex, despite everything I continued to love you, I never imagined things would get this far. I assumed you'd accept my relationship with Cross and we could have had a lot of money and a comfortable life. Things would eventually have returned to normal. I apologize. I ruined your plans." I said sarcastically, "It wasn't in my plans. It was Cross's. He thought he could intimidate you, as he does with others. Neither of us expected you to fight back. Perhaps he underestimated me," I said. Lauren asked abruptly, "Where's your car?" I smiled slightly. "I moved it after Cross threatened to plant pills in it. By the way, what did those men do at the house? When you returned, they appeared interested in the garage in my missing car." Lauren hesitated before admitting they intended to plant evidence. "I did not want it, but Gregory insisted. You do not appear to mind stacking evidence against me. If you genuinely love me, simply tell the truth and the charges will be dropped. I can tell Alex. I'm into deep. Gregory has complete control over everything. I guess I'm out of luck." I mentioned that. I asked what's with the accusation of misuse. Lauren explained that he had seen pictures of your injuries but had never touched you. This was Gregory's idea. He made up a story about you going crazy, accused us of having an affair and attacked me. Leo attempted to assist, but you shot him to make it believable. Gregory punched me, causing the injuries. We've been practicing the story ever since. I apologize, Alex, she added. I did not want this to happen. I want things to return to their previous state. That is not going to happen, I replied. Lauren then suggested a way out. Gregory knows about your PTSD. He expects you to plead guilty. Based on that, he'll use his connections to get you into a veterans hospital for treatment. In a year or less, you could be released and we could begin again with the children. So that was the real reason. She came to speak with me. She asked me to volunteer, promising the cross would help me receive a shorter sentence in a veteran's mental institution. I didn't believe any of it, but I didn't tell Lauren. Instead, I went with her. That sounds good to me, Lauren, but I need some time to think about it. Plus, I need to speak with Uncle George. I believe he might agree. In comparison to your testimony, he does not have much evidence to support my case. Walsh and Leo. Please do it for yourself. Alex, Lauren had it, do it for yourself. Me and the children. In a few years it will be as if it never happened. It will only be a temporary setback. I doubt it. I said you had been with another man for months. They wanted me to be a betrayed man. For your boss threatened to take my children away if I didn't cooperate and made false accusations. That'll land me in jail for years. That is a significant stumbling block. That is why I would like you to accept Gregory's offer. It is the easiest way out for all of us. Lauren spoke with tears in her eyes. Like I said, I'll think about it. I replied once more and we were done. I assumed it was time for her to leave, but Lauren placed her hand on mine and suggested we rest together for a few minutes. I missed having you in my bed. Is there any way we could fall asleep together tonight and forget about everything for a few hours? That's not going to happen. Lauren, I said firmly. She received the message. Please accept Gregory's offer, she said. As I led her to the door before leaving, she hugged me. It felt genuine, but I did not return it. The hearing's purpose was to determine whether I would be held for investigation. The prosecution was confident. Predictably, they put Cross Leo and Lauren on the stand to tell their well-rehearsed stories. Uncle Jake asked each witness only one question, to use whether testimony is true. All three responded positively. Uncle Jake wanted to go after Jose Miguel and the main witnesses, but proving their attempt to frame me was irrelevant to the charges against me, especially since their efforts were unsuccessful. When the prosecution had finished, it was Uncle Jake's turn. He began with permission from the court. The defense wishes to introduce a videotape of the events as evidence. This tape is culpatory, Your Honor. Just then the assistant prosecutor objected, claiming that this was new evidence that had not been presented for review. There's a reason for this. Uncle Jake explained the defense's concern about bias from the district attorney and the court, as well as the unfair blocking of our evidence. Do you have proof that the district attorney has been compromised, Mr. Johnson? The judge inquired. The proof is in the video, Your Honor, Your Honor, Uncle Jake responded. The judge began to rise, saying then you and the prosecution will come to my chambers, where I will review the tape and decide whether it is admissible. Uncle Jake interrupted. No, Your Honor, we will not do that. Why not? The judge demanded, his rage growing at the defiance. Because, Your Honor, Uncle Jake explained, the defense does not trust the court's impartiality and we will not risk having our evidence suppressed. The judge, visibly perturbed, inquired, do you accuse the court of corruption, Mr. Johnson? Perhaps, Your Honor. Uncle Jake replied. Mr. Johnson, can you prove your accusation? Is there proof also on tape? The judge pressed. It is on the tape, Your Honor, as Uncle Jake confirmed. However, I can prove my point if you answer a few questions. The judge, skeptical, clarified. Let me get this straight, Mr. Johnson. You think you can show the court's bias against your client by asking me a few questions? Is this correct? Yes, Your Honor, Uncle Jake confirmed. The judge, now intrigued, said, very well. Mr. Johnson, ask your questions. However, if you fail, we will review the tape in chambers and I will rule on their admissibility. I accept, Your Honor, Uncle Jake agreed. However, if this videotape is found inadmissible and my client is convicted based on the testimony of the 3 prosecution witnesses, I will release the tape to the media and online regardless of the court's decision. Furthermore, if you do not release the tape, you will jeopardize your credibility. The judge, feeling threatened, stated, I feel like I'm being threatened, Mr. Johnson. Before the judge's rage could erupt further, Uncle Jake quickly inquired, isn't your oldest son in college? Honor HK, attending the Air Force Academy, right? Yes, the judge responded. He's a freshman. Isn't it very competitive to get into the Air Force Academy? Uncle Jake proceeded. The judge nodded. It is. Uncle Jake explained. First, your son had to apply through your district's congressman or senator. He was then scheduled for a civil service exam. Based on the results, he was chosen alongside 9 other candidates. He was sent to a nearby Air Force base for a medical examination, physical fitness test, and pilot navigator aptitude test. In addition, he needed to take college entrance exams. Is this all correct, Your Honor? Yes, the judge responded. He spoke with pride in his voice. He received a minus in high school and participated on the swim team each year. You are understandably proud of him, Your Honor. The judge grew impatient and dead. Mr. Johnson, state your point. Uncle Jake pushed on. Your son's application packet also contained 3 letters of recommendation. Correct. That's correct, Mr. Johnson. The judge confirmed, Your Honor. Who were those letters from? Let us see. 1 letter was from his swim coach and the 3rd was written by his math teacher. Your Honor, Uncle Jake inquired pointedly. The judge hesitated before admitting. Mr. Gregory Cross recommended my son for admission to the Air Force Academy. Uncle Jake seized the moment by saying, Mr. Walsh must have known your son very well unless he fabricated a letter full of lies. The judge clarified. My son worked in Mr. Cross's office during his sophomore and junior years of high school. He wants to become a lawyer someday. So Mr. Walsh is a family friend. Uncle Jake inquired further. He's more of an acquaintance than a family friend, as well as a professional associate in some of the legal organizations to which I belong. So now, that was on the first. Your Honor, you understand the defense's concern about your impartiality in this case. Uncle Jake finished his questioning. The judge responded, You've put me in a position that calls into question my integrity. Counselor, please know that any association with Mr. Walsh will not influence my decisions. But you've brought up an issue of perception. The judge paused for a moment before looking up and saying, Turn on the video, Counselor. Uncle Jake instructed the BITH to turn down the lights and lower the projection screens on either side of the judge's bench. Uncle Jake turned to me and said, Showtime, Alex. You pressed the enter key, and the video started playing. The entire scene unfolded in front of the judge. Prosecution and courtroom audience cross-threatened me, saying, I personally know the majority of the top police officials. I know many of the attorneys in the DA's office. I've even had fun with some of them. The prosecution bench let out a collective gasp. The assistant district attorney. She lowered her head to the table and began sobbing. We all stared at her for a moment before she quickly gathered her belongings and exited the courtroom, still crying. Uncle Jake continued to watch the video across. Leo and Lauren attempted to leave the courtroom quietly together, but they were easily noticed. The judge explicitly instructed them to remain seated. The remaining aides watched the video until the end. The lead prosecutor stood up quickly, clearly looking for a break, but before he could ask, Uncle Jake said, I have another video. Uncle Jake played the second video without waiting for permission, explaining that it had been recorded 2 weeks earlier, when my wife paid me a visit in my townhouse. He then pressed enter and the video started. Lauren understood the full impact of the video. It showed her admitting everything Cross had attempted to do to me. She screamed at Alex, How could you do this to me? After a few minutes, Cross understood the gravity of the situation. You are a stupid fool. You are a stupid fool. You allowed him to record you. What were your thoughts? He exclaimed. Lauren had no idea that when she came to visit me, I had my iPhone set to record everything she said. The phone was on the coffee table in front of her, hidden behind books and papers. I turned it on right before opening the door to let her in. I requested a recess to go over for the new evidence. Uncle Jake handed dated DVD copies of the videotapes. The trial was adjourned until the following morning. The following morning, 3 prosecution witnesses were noticeably absent. Instead of the acting district attorney, the county's actual district attorney sat at the prosecution table. The judge, "Let him speak first. I'll be brief, Your Honor," he said first. "All charges against Mr. Hunter are dropped. We believe he acted in self-defense by defending himself against Mr. and Mr. Angel. It was quite violent self-defense, but it was still self-defense. Second, my office has issued arrest warrants for Mr. Gregory Cross, Mr. Leo Angel, and Mrs. Alex Hunter for conspiracy to commit perjury, bribery, perjury, assault with intent to cause grievous harm, making false statements to police, filing false complaints, and obstructing justice. Furthermore, my office was informed that Mr. Walsh attempted to plant false evidence against Mr. Hunter. Mr. Angel and Mrs. Hunter were aware of this. We have also identified two suspects who worked for Mr. Walsh and attempted to plant false evidence, and we are in the process of arresting them. Gregory Cross, Leo Angel, and my wife were arrested and later released on bail." The district attorney was furious to learn that Gregory Cross had compromised his office over the years, and he set out to find all of his colleagues who had worked with Cross. Ultimately, all of the defendants were convicted. Gregory Cross was the only one who pleaded not guilty, which turned out to be a mistake, because both Leo and Lauren pleaded guilty and testified against him. Walsh was sentenced to 11 years in prison. Leo received a 7-year sentence, while Lauren was sentenced to 5 years. Jose and Miguel were arrested for allegedly obstructing justice and tampering with evidence. The district attorney pitted them against one another until Miguel broke down and confessed. I'm hoping for a lighter sentence. Both ended up serving lengthy prison sentences. Gregory Cross was held in county jail before being transferred to state prison. Leo and Lauren, on the other hand, were given 2 weeks to organize their affairs before turning themselves in to the sheriff. Leo used that time to prepare his family for his 7-year absence, hoping to be paroled in for years with good behavior, as his lawyer had advised. Here is the next story. I was surprised when I told him I wanted a divorce, but he was ready and had a brutal revenge plan. I thought I was saving myself and throwing my husband under the bus by filing for divorce, but he was one step ahead of me and backstabbed me without thinking twice. Hello, my name is Megan and we have been married for 3 years. I've been making food for various events for quite some time now. I'm 28 years old. My husband's name is Eric. Phil is a 30-year-old real estate professional. Phil and I connected through a mutual friend. Our friend at the time said she liked the kind of life I was living and wanted me to meet a friend, Phil. But I didn't want to think about it too much at the time, so I dismissed it because I had recently ended a relationship and didn't want to start another. But our mutual friend convinced me, and I told her she could give him my phone number. I met Phil for the first time and I was unimpressed because he tried so hard to impress me. But I wasn't buying it, so I ignored him. So our first meeting was somewhat awkward. I didn't understand who Phil was at first, but as time passed we began to understand and relate to one another. We dated for a while and things heated up between us. Our relationship was progressing positively. I was overjoyed because I reminded myself that there was a time when I wanted nothing to do with him. But I am grateful to God that I was able to come out of my shell and allow Phil to love me. Phil was someone who had no problems at all. He was treating me well and, of course, he had flaws that I ignored. One of his flaws was that he could remain silent on certain topics and keep it to himself. I did not like that. I did not want that in my life. I wanted someone who could communicate with me no matter what, but I ignored the red flag and we continued dating. We dated for a while. There were some days when it was all fun and other days when we had problems. I was in love with Phil and was willing to take chances with him. The fact that I ignored those red flags was the source of all my problems. I told my family about Phil. My family includes my mother. My mother was my everything. She had been there for me since I can remember. She encouraged my dreams. So when I told her about Phil, she was overjoyed and encouraged me all the way. When she met him, she was overjoyed. After, Phil asked me to marry him and I was skeptical for a while. I felt like we'd known each other for a long time and he was discussing marriage. As I took some time to reflect on the situation, I was relieved that Phil understood my point of view and gave me space to do so. I felt grateful for everything I told my friend Patricia, as she advised me to follow my gut and do what made me happy. After a few weeks, I realized that holding back my answers was taking a toll on Phil. I accepted his proposal and we became engaged. We planned our wedding and it exceeded our expectations. I got to meet Phil's family, who literally welcomed me into their home. Following the wedding, we intended to spend time in our new home. Phil had asked me to move in with him, which I was uncomfortable with, so I told him that we could just buy a house together. He agreed, and so did we. It was overwhelming at first because I had to rearrange and organize everything. It was a lot and Phil helped me. He made sure I was less stressed and I was grateful. A few months after we had settled in, we returned to our respective fields. My business was doing well and I was grateful. Every morning Phil and I had our routine, which we were very comfortable with. My work can be extremely stressful, but I still needed to make time for my husband and my home. Married life can be very demanding. Phil was the type who preferred everything to be traditional. I prepared meals, did laundry and so on. At first I was fine with it, but it eventually became too much for me. Phil was always hesitant to do simple things for himself, such as pick up his plates after meals or iron his clothes. I couldn't keep up with everything, and when I told him how tired I was, he called me lazy. It was a big fight that day, but I did my best to avoid getting into it. We had our first fight as a married couple. It was bad, but we found our way back together. We made certain that we had resolved everything. He apologized and I forgave him. He did everything correctly by apologizing, and I decided to forget everything. As time passed, we made plans to communicate more and do the necessary. Days passed, and he made an enormous effort to apologize. Weeks later we made plans to visit my mother and spend a few days together. I literally had to drag Phil with me to see her. My mother was very fond of Phil, so they got along well. During a visit to my hometown, I received the biggest shock of my life. My high school crush Daniel was also in town. I learned that he returned from the military and was finally down. That was precisely why we broke up in the first place. He wanted to join the military and I told him I couldn't wait, so we broke up. It had to be the most painful experience of my life, because I loved him and didn't want to lose him, but I couldn't stop him from living, so we had to break up. When I heard he was in town, I didn't know how to react, because it brought back a lot of memories that I had suppressed. I told my mother that we needed to leave after a few days because I didn't want to see Daniel and, more importantly, I didn't want him and Phil to run into each other. But that didn't happen because we saw each other and simply said hello. But Daniel wanted to speak with me, which I declined because I was with Phil. I had to beg Daniel that I would see him later if he hadn't caused a scene in front of my husband. He agreed and left. I was relieved Phil hadn't seen us. Otherwise he might have been suspicious. Of course. After that day I attempted to contact Daniel, but there was no chance. So I made time one day for Phil to go out with my mother. When I met Daniel, he mentioned how much he missed Arthur and how much he wanted me back in his life. I had to tell him that it wouldn't be possible because I was married, but he explained that he knew I still had feelings for him and that we should pursue it and see where it leads. I knew in my heart that I had not truly forgotten about my first love, Daniel, but there was nothing I could do now. I was married and I adored my husband. I told him to leave me alone and left, but he did not listen. Daniel was extremely persistent. He could appear in unexpected places and I used to pray that Phil wouldn't see us because he might be angry. Daniel somehow obtained my phone number after we left town and he began to bother me. I wasn't saying I wasn't still in love with him. I just didn't want to leave my husband and start over with someone else. I wasn't sure he'd stay with me. Daniel left me once. What was the guarantee that he wouldn't leave again if things got rough? When we returned, I went straight to work because I had a lot of events planned and Phil had business to attend to. So he was out of town. After work, I could go out for drinks with Patricia. I think she had more fun than me. She had everything going for her. She was single and simply living her life. I told her about the problem I was having with Daniel and she advised me to simply sit down with him and work things out so that we can both move on from everything. I understood where she was coming from and agreed. She also advised me to be extremely cautious in order to protect my marriage. To Phil, I discussed this situation with Daniel and he said he would only talk to me if I came to his hotel room. I didn't think too much about it. So I went to his hotel room because all I wanted to do was finish everything and move on with my life. That also entails burning my feelings for him. I was finished. I needed to focus on my marriage. When I got to the hotel room, we started talking. We talked for a while. Then Daniel and I kissed. It was not planned. When things between us became heated, I began to leave. We eventually had sex and I had mixed feelings at first, because I had just cheated on my husband and hoped he would not find out went against everything I stood for in my mind. I just committed a major sin, but Daniel told me not to beat myself up over something I couldn't control. He was able to brainwash me into believing that I had done nothing wrong. Following that day, Daniel and I stayed in touch. We could talk every day while I'm at work. I made it so Phil wouldn't see me talking on the phone. But after that day things started to change between me and Phil. He grew distant. He barely spoke to me. It was as if he discovered that I had cheated on him. I say that I asked him what was wrong and he said it was nothing, and that he was just feeling under the weather. I brushed it off and carried on with my life. I continued to date Daniel and had sex with him, which I was embarrassed about. However, there was nothing I could do. I made certain that we kept our relationship private so that no one could see us. My relationship with Phil felt very new and fresh. It was as if we'd never parted in the first place. Everything was running smoothly. I had no idea what was wrong with Phil because he was always harsh and angry with me. I knew there was no way for him to know I had been cheating, so I was perplexed by his distance from me. I told my friend Patricia about Phil's latest attitude toward me and she suggested that we try to see a therapist. I left out the part about cheating on my husband because I didn't want to be judged and I knew she would drag me for it. But there was nothing I could do. I'm not sure if it was love I still felt for Daniel or just infatuation, but there was something. Because Phil's situation seemed to be bigger than mine, I suggested we see a therapist. He refused and assured me that everything was fine between us. He explained that he was just going through a difficult time at work and that there was nothing to worry about then. My affair with Daniel lasted months and I still believed that no one saw us together. However, everything started to go wrong when Daniel started to disappear from me. We could go weeks without seeing each other, and I missed him. I didn't give my own husband the same level of attention that I gave Daniel, so Daniel's absence for a while had an impact on me. I even stopped caring for Phil at times because I rarely saw him at home. He was constantly busy. It was unlike him, and I became concerned. Phil and I lived in the same house, but we were far apart and Daniel ignored me. It felt as if I had no one again, so I decided to figure out why Daniel had been ignoring me. It was then that I received the biggest shock of my life. Daniel had told me that everything we did was enjoyable, but he didn't want to move on with me. I told him that I didn't want to move on with him because I was already married. I was only interested in having fun and getting the attention he was giving me, which I was not getting from my husband. He told me that I was a cheater, that he didn't want me in his life and that people like me, who could confidently cheat on their husbands, could do much worse. I was perplexed as to what had triggered Daniel's mood swing. I thought he loved me and was going to fight for me, but I was mistaken. He only used me for my body. I was so angry that some days I cried myself to sleep. I didn't think Daniel could break my heart for the second time, but he did. He insulted and degraded me without any remorse. I wished I hadn't met someone as bad as Daniel, but I told myself not to let it bring me down. I made an effort to move on with my life and, at the very least, work on my marriage to divert my attention away from a variety of issues. My overthinking was beginning to take its toll on me. I told myself I needed something to distract me, and I got the idea from my mother, who called and said she was still accepting grandchildren. And it dawned on me that Phil and I hadn't really discussed having children, and so I promised myself that we'd talk about it. But when I finally got hold of Phil, he said he wasn't ready to have children with me, and he didn't give me a good reason. He walked out on me and dismissed the conversation, but I knew I wasn't finished. After that day, Phil started to avoid me. He no longer consumed Zay's food. He rarely came home. It was as if I were living alone, without a husband. But I wanted children from Phil, and I'm not sure why he didn't want children. We are married and love each other. Why was he avoiding the topic? I explained my plight to my friend Patricia, who advised me to approach it calmly, but there was nothing to be calm about. We had the money, so what was holding my husband back? I knew something was seriously wrong because Phil had changed. He was so distant from me. When we first married, we were also very lovely, but now he was something else. I kept asking myself where it had gone wrong. There was no way he could know I had cheated. He wasn't always present, and whenever Daniel and I went out, we were always cautious. I told myself I was going to ask him what the problem was, but I knew I was going to do it in a very sensible manner. But my patience was wearing thin. When I spoke with Phil again, things got very heated between us. We both said things we were embarrassed about. I told him I was tired of being treated like fern in my husband's home and that I wanted a divorce, and he said it was fine and left the house. The very next day I received paperwork stating that my husband was divorcing me. I told myself it was an expensive joke because our problem was not serious enough for him to give me divorce papers. What have I done? Just like that, we had a minor disagreement and I didn't expect to be divorced the next day. We are married couples. Always have problems. What is happening? Where have I done wrong? I even tried to reach Phil, but it was possible. He seemed to have vanished. I told my mother and Patricia about what I was going through, and they came to comfort me. I explained that I knew there had to be more to what had happened because I had done nothing wrong. Maybe Phil already had a woman he wanted to marry and wanted to dump me, but I made it clear that I would not allow him to be happy in that relationship. How is he going to enjoy his life? While leaving me hanging, I told myself I was going to drag out this divorce. He had no right to divorce me over frivolous issues. We were asked to report to court, and I did. Throughout the process, I made sure to emphasize how baseless the divorce was and how the court was wasting their time. But when Phil was asked about the reason for the divorce, he said it was because I cheated on him. I was shocked that he knew I had cheated on him. There was no possible way. I was cautious. I left the court that day and word had spread that I had cheated on my husband. My mother called to express how disappointed she was in me. But I knew Phil had no evidence that he cheated on him, and I was going to prove tomorrow that I didn't cheat, whereas he was simply claiming what he wasn't sure of. My mother was making things difficult for me by blaming me and telling me that I should have done better. But when I told her that I had not cheated on my husband, she didn't believe me. So I told myself that I'd just avoid her so I could stay sane. I assured myself that no one would know I had cheated. The next day in court, Phil used pictures of me and Danielle together to prove that I had cheated on him. I was astounded at how he got the pictures. This was all new to me. I thought I was very careful about what and how things happened. I was humiliated in court that day. I was looked down upon as the woman who cheated on her husband, despite the fact that there were pictures to prove it. I wished I hadn't been disgraced like that. I wished my husband hadn't taken this cruel revenge of photographing me with Daniel. I was ashamed of myself. After what had happened in court, I told myself that all of this wasn't worth it. I should just divorce Phil and let things go. I was exhausted, and the fact that Phil continued to release the photos to my family in order to prove a point devastated me. And I thought we were in love before we married. I'm not sure why Phil would do this to me. People in the community started avoiding me. Some people called me all kinds of names. My friends stopped answering my calls. I was just alone in the house. I was asked to pay a sum of money to Phil. And I did. Even if I had to pay through my nose, I paid. Everything I ever treasured was taken from me. I did my best to sit down with Phil and explain things to him why he cheated, but he ignored me. I begged Phil to listen to me, but he was determined to make my life miserable. A few weeks later, the house where we had built our home was forcibly removed from me, and I had no idea how I was going to live. I couldn't go stay with my mother because she has made it clear that she doesn't want anything to do with me because I disagreed with her, but I was determined to make things right. When I went to my mother's house and saw Phil, I was relieved because I knew it was an opportunity for me to apologize to him and possibly beg him to accept me back. But I got the shock of my life when my mother told me to leave because she wasn't ready to see my face, but I didn't know where to go. I was barred from entering my own home, and my own mother refused to have anything to do with me. Phil, it turned the entire situation against me. I'm not sure how he managed to do it. I was able to move my belongings to a small hotel where I stayed. There were days when I cried my eyes out and other days when all I could do was sit and regret making the wrong decision update. Right now I'm just trying to organize my life. I was able to see a small job that I'd been managing for a while. I'm sorry about my decisions. I wished I had never seen Daniel. He came and shattered my life. He shattered my marriage. Phil was a wonderful man, and I used his gentleness to my advantage, and finally I got burned. My mother was slowly coming around, but it was a step in the right direction. I told myself that I had to make the right decisions and that I would apologize to and forgive myself for everything I had done. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode of the story, please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to get notifications for updates.